Hello and welcome to Drilling Insight. I'm your host, Jeremy Verduzco, host and editor of the Driller magazine. I'm joined today by co-host Brock Yordy.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is an exciting day. I've known our guest as I was becoming a professional in this industry outside of my father's drill company. I was flying to Myrtle Beach to interview with Bayreuth, and I sat next to John on the way down, and I'd known John from the Michigan Groundwater Association. I was a little unnerved to go interview, and John talked to me that flight and gave me some insight and helped me become the professional I am today.
Okay, so that leads us into our guest, esteemed driller, longtime servant of the industry, Mr. John Schmitt. So thank you for being with us on the show today. How are you, John?
Well, I'm very well. It's a pleasure to have you. I told Brock a lot of water been pumped out of the ground since we visited down at Myrtle Beach and coming back, flying back and forth to Detroit. And most people probably understand I write a column for the Driller, have for years. Enjoy it very much. And glad to have you gentlemen with me today. And
Okay.
Yep, nice to see you both.
Okay, well, again, thanks for being on the show, John, and we'll start with our usual opening question. So, you've been in this industry a long time. Did you choose this industry, or did this industry choose you?
That's a good question. It could be answered both ways. I started as a little boy of about 6, going with my father, who was primarily a pump man, but did some well drilling too. Mm-hmm. And of course, at 6, so I could barely carry a 24-inch pipe wrench, but I did do it. And then when I and I would go with him on weekends and in the summer. And when I was 13, he hired me as a helper, getting paid. I did my first well alone when I was 18. And I guess I was always attracted to the industry, to the machinery, the equipment, and I was an only child. And when I graduated from the University of Michigan with a degree in engineering, he offered me a partnership for $1, and so I joined him. That was in 1959, and the rest, I guess, is history. It's 2021, and I'm still somewhat involved. I guess I chose the industry, but you could make a case that it chose me.
So you chose the industry. You're working in it. A lot of us have been in the industry as a family business and nepotism of, going into the next level. But you went to the University of Michigan and got a degree in engineering. What drove that?
Well, my father drove that. As I say, I was an only child, and my father was a really great guy. He was 45 years old when I was born, and I was his only child. That's neither here nor there, but he was a very good practical engineer. And he would have made a terrific graduate engineer, but when he was growing up, there just wasn't any money to go to school. He did graduate from high school. He was very proud of that, and I think when he graduated from high school in the early 1900s, that was equivalent to a bachelor's degree today, and he always preached engineering to me. And so I find it kind of interesting that I write a column, because English was my weakest subject by far in school. I just wasn't into that sort of thing, literature and things like that.
Yeah.
And so, but I was into engineering. The only other industry that ever appealed to me is that I was apparently been told this, pretty darn good with a T-square and a triangle. And I had an opportunity to go to work for an architect, and never did. It's a long time ago. Was it a mistake? Maybe. Was it not a mistake? Probably not. So anyway, engineering was my interest, especially machinery, drilling machines and things like that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So you worked in the industry for a long time. Your specialty was cable tool. How how have things changed in the years that you've been witnessing this industry?
Oh gosh, Jeremy,
I mean, it's kind of a big question.
so many changes. The biggest thing I see is that when I was a young man at 18, drilling that first well by myself, the industry had a lot of what you might call mom and pop operations. In other words, a man, there were two men, maybe a father and son, maybe a man and his nephew, that ran a drilling business. That's just about gone now.
Yeah.
And the analogy is it's a lot like farming. And ironically, or maybe not ironically, a lot of well drillers started as farmers and needed a well, couldn't find one, found an old well rig.
Mm-hmm.
Next thing you know, they were in the well drilling business. And so today, I believe 1% of our population are farmers. Farmer used to have 40, 80, 120 acres. Now he's got 10,000 acres. And that's the biggest change that I've seen. The technology too. I mean, when I started, if you could drill with a rig a well a week around here, you were considered a darn good driller. A well a week. Now, if you can't do a well in a short day, you're considered a pretty bad driller. And the equipment, pumps, you sold a pump and you knew you were going to hold it by the hand until the day it died. Now you install a pump and you might not see it for 15 years. So, tremendous changes, like our society as a whole. Tremendous changes.
All right, so 1% of our population is farmers, and we obviously, from the machinery, everything that we've seen, evolved from, it used to be, steam, and then hydraulic, and then electric over hydraulic. Families learned together on the farm, and there wasn't a manual for farming, same as there's not many manuals for drilling.
That's right.
You've been writing for the Driller, National Driller before that. There's a photo of you behind us from the National Driller's Buyer's Guide with Doc Faison. You are like a godfather of this industry for us. What drives you to continue to write articles? And you're writing many articles on cable tool, which is becoming a lost art.
That's interesting, Brock. I completely agree. Cable tool is becoming a lost art, or has become a lost art. I started out with my dad as a young man. He was drilling a lot of hollow rod, but we eventually went to cable tool, and that's pretty much what I've done all my life. Now, have I observed rotary drilling? Yes, I have. In fact, I've got two wells on my place. One is drilled with a casing hammer, and one was drilled with mud rotary. But I and maybe I sound as a big man here, but I've got some knowledge that a lot of folks don't have due to the changing times, and I feel I have an obligation to exchange that knowledge with other people, because when guys my age are gone, the technology is going with us, sadly. And I'm not saying there aren't younger people who can drill cable tool, but I know a couple of good drillers that have got cable tool rigs, and they sit because they don't have anybody to operate them. So I've enjoyed writing about that, and I get a good comment now and then, and that makes me feel real good. And so it's something that, be honest with you, at my age, I'm 86. I'm not going to be able to do much out in the field, but I can still sit down, dictate a column to my wife. She sends it to Jeremy. It ends up in print, and so I'm still part of the industry.
Yeah.
I'm still involved.
So let's get a little bit into that kind of specific knowledge. On a recent episode, we interviewed hydrogeologist Tom Hanna, and he was talking about development. And in particular, he had said that Well, these cable tool guys, they knew something about development. They spent so long on a well that they didn't mind spending the time to make sure it was adequately pumping before they left the site. So can you talk a little bit about development from a cable tool perspective and how you see it as different from methods that have come along since?
Yes, I can, Jeremy. And please don't, the people watching this, please don't mean this is I'm denouncing rotary. You can do a good job with a rotary. You can do a good job with a cable tool. You can do a good job or a bad job with a sledgehammer and a point, 1.25 inch pipe driving in around the ground. But I think in the hurry-up world of today, especially for the domestic well, development is kind of a thing of the past. In other words, get it done, drill it, cover it up, slam, bam, get down the road. And if you got problems, say, well, I didn't do that. I know that, and again, this is not a denunciation of rotary, but I know that fellows seem to have a lot of problems now and then getting good bacteria samples. Well, it's dawned on me, and I remember talking with my friend John Schmitt from Kansas, who is an expert in groundwater and water chemistry. Mm-hmm. They're not getting the mud out of the hole. And the bacteria is hiding in the mud. So you can chlorinate and chlorinate and chlorinate, but the bacteria will never, it's hiding in the mud. It's never going to be in contact, so the chlorine is never going to kill the bacteria. In the cable tool method, we didn't use any mud, or we used very little mud. And so development was very important to get good clean water. The bromide, so to speak, that my dad and I always went by was if you had more than 2 grains of sand in a 5-gallon pail, you had too much. And so there are a number of methods of development: surging, baling, backwashing, using a high pressure jet to develop in a screened well. Mm-hmm. And I think you made a good point in your question. It took you a little longer to drill the well, maybe a lot longer, with the cable tools, so you didn't mind spending some hours on development and making sure you got good clean water. I think development, especially in the domestic well area, is kind of lost.
I agree with that. It's great for you to bring up John Schneiders. I last week was in the groundwater and wells class with Dr. Tom Hanna and Mike Schneiders, John's son.
Yes.
And it was this great experience of community of well owners and engineers and drilling companies and other regulatory agencies coming together, and we had this discussion. And my question for you, John, is in all of this time of getting to drill, my entire life you have been part of all the associations, from the Michigan Groundwater Association to the NGWA. How did you find time, and what drove you to be, I look at the photos behind you of the men and women that you've worked with on a state and national level. You went to the fly-in in DC. How did you find time?
I think this goes back to my father again. Later in his career, he heard about this organization called the Michigan Well Drillers Association, which is what Michigan Groundwater used to be called. Mm-hmm. And we'd go to some local meetings, and then we started to go to conventions. The first convention I went to from Michigan was 1952. A lot of years ago. You weren't very old at that time.
It was zero, negative.
But anyway, and my dad really enjoyed what you might today we would call networking. In other words, meeting with other. Did you ever do this? Yeah. Did you have a problem with this? Yeah, I did. Well, how did you solve it? So he really liked that, and I always was. I like that too, but I also enjoyed seeing the new equipment, the new pumps, the new types of pipe. I can remember when non-metallic pipe first came into the industry. I mean, before that it was strictly steel pipe, and that was it. Yeah. And we had polyethylene. That was the only non-metallic. So I always enjoyed seeing the technology, and this was an era of the 50s and the 60s of great technological change. There was something new every year. And then I was approached to run for the board of directors of the Michigan Association. And maybe this sounds a little egotistical, but I felt that I could offer some leadership among drillers. And I've told a lot of people this. I can remember going to meetings and drillers would actually threaten one another. They'd say, "I'm gonna blow your rig up." "No, you're not, you SOB." I mean, it was nasty. And today, the sons and grandsons of those drillers help each other out. Now, are they in bed on pricing? No.
Yeah.
But if you need a tool or a problem, and I've experienced this myself. So anyway, I always enjoyed association work and being involved in the association. Somebody said, you're really a pretty good politician. And I said, "No, I'm just a simple well driller." And I said, "Well, maybe I am a politician. I don't know." I don't think I'd want to go into real politics, although I was elected to some township offices on some occasions.
So I'm wondering, we touched on farm families a little bit earlier. There aren't as many farm families, and that means there aren't as many farm kids.
Yes.
So the industry is in this awkward point where the drilling has gotten a lot more high tech.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not just a high school diploma so much anymore.
Right.
What is your advice for someone who's considering drilling as a path for their career? What would you tell, an 18 or 20-year-old thinking about going into this line of construction?
I think they should get as much formal education as they're comfortable with. My friend Brock is a college graduate, Western Michigan University. I'm the University of Michigan. I have many friends from Michigan State.
Go Green.
Michigan State University. I have a whole lot of relatives, daughters included, who are Michigan State grads. But I'm not saying that the four-year college, such as those, is for everybody, but there are community colleges. I know some drillers that are darn good drillers, and their communication skills were very weak, especially in writing. They couldn't write a good letter if their life depended on it, and sometimes it did. So I would recommend that a person, man or woman, going into the industry, get as much education as they're comfortable with, and then get hooked up with somebody who knows drilling, whether it's a relative or somebody you can go to work for.
Yeah.
Because as Brock mentioned, there's no place you can really go and get a degree in well drilling. So this is hands-on and out in the field, and I would recommend to someone to make a long story short, get as much education, formal education as you can, and then hook up with somebody that is experienced and get your basic experience yourself.
Can you talk a little bit about how your engineering degree informed the type of driller and businessman that you became?
Oh gosh, that's a kind of a tough one. I think that the fact that I had a degree, and my degree is in mechanical engineering, it gave me the confidence to challenge, to accept almost any challenge and come up with a reasonable solution. Oddly enough, when I started in the industry full-time in 1959, college graduates who were drillers were pretty rare.
Yeah.
They're not nearly as rare anymore. And I think I just would have to say it gave me the confidence to meet any challenge and understand it. Yeah.
I completely agree. The real world experience of having to leave your community and meet all these other folks and have to collaborate with them from a technical class and whatnot, and then getting to come back to your community and the writing and whatnot is, I think, the great piece that we overlook when we think of the college debt. That's my comment. My question is, I want to see some tooling. You got some tooling here yet?
I do have a few tools anymore. I don't own any drill rigs anymore, or even a pump hoist. I've sold those off to friends. I've got a socket, a set of jars, and if you've read my columns, I've written about those. I've got a drill bit. I got some drive blocks. I've got some tool wrenches, and I told Jeremy the tool wrenches I've got are for small size tools for 4-inch drilling. The tool wrenches weigh 50 pounds a piece, and I'm going to let you, Brock, get them out of storage and if we take a picture of them. But yes, I've got a few tools.
I got my wish. We went out to John's shop, and he's got some old cable tool technology. Obviously, almost all cable tool technology at this point is old. John, what am I holding?
Well, Brock, you've got a drill bit, which is this lower section. Actually, the drill bit stops right here. And then the upper section is the socket. The socket is what is attached to the wire line that comes off the rig that holds the tool string. And the drill bit is the part that actually drills the hole. Now, this particular bit has had the cutting edge cut off, and I was using it as a reamer. This is for a 4-inch well. That bit would weigh roughly 100 pounds. This socket would weigh around 50 or 60 pounds. The loop that you see at the top wouldn't be on there ordinarily. That was welded on so I could hook it with a hook on the machine I was using and lower it into the well to scrape a 4-inch casing. That socket would weigh, as I say, about 50, 60 pounds. That would be the top of any tool string. And the drill bit would be the bottom of any tool string. In between, we might have a jars, which we're going to show you in a couple minutes, and a drill stem. Fortunately, I don't have a drill stem. It's just a long, round steel bar that provides weight. These have got flats on them, and they are tightened with some really heavy wrenches. And I mean, you really tighten them up. The joint here is a tapered thread. That joint is 2 1/4 by 1.5 inches. It's about that long, and then you have a shoulder. And if you put a little bit of lubricant on and tighten them up nice and tight, they will stay together forever and yet still come apart. So these are, for a string of cable tools, 2 absolutely essential parts, the drill bit and the socket, and as I say this, the jars and also the stem.
Well, let's take a look at a set of jars.
Let's do that.
So we have a set of jars here. What size jars are these, and how would you use them?
Well, these are about a 3 1/4 diameter jar that would be used typically, Brock, in a 4-inch hole. They would go with that bit and socket. This particular model, I've got a substitute at the bottom that you can hook to pipe, and I was using it to jar pumps that were stuck in the well, which happens on occasion. But ordinarily, you would put the socket where this loop is, this loop assembly, and then down here, you would attach it to the stem. They have a stroke of, a good foot and a half, and if the tools become stuck, you can slack off some line and literally jar the tools loose. In other words, you're kind of hammering them loose. Some drillers never use jars. Other drillers wouldn't drill a foot deep without jars. It's a kind of like, do you like Ford or Chevrolet? And there's nothing wrong with either approach. But anyway, those jars would probably weigh, for this 4-inch size, 120 pounds. And of course, you can get jars that weigh 700 pounds for a big diameter hole. But these would be for a 4-inch well. And again, they have the tapered joints, the female here and the male down there. Excuse me, the male here and the female down there. I'm upside down, but anyway. Basically a safety device, offers no efficiency to drilling other than you get your tools out rather than having to go fish them if they get stuck.
I have stuck things and I have used jars, and yeah, it's not fun, but that's one good thing about a walking beam and being able to grab with the brake and whatnot, that you can.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And if you're doing some fishing, if unfortunately you've lost tools or you got something really stuck, then you would use a longer stroke jars, and they would be down below the drill stem. But in the drilling position, they would be above the stem and be a somewhat shorter stroke. These must be, I'd say those jars are maybe 80, 90 years old.
Okay.
So,
They don't make them like they used to, or they don't make them at all at this point.
well, I understand they make them, but if you're going to go by set, take your wallet with you. That's what I understand anyhow. So
Thank you for your insight and knowledge
all
on
right.
this.
That's all right.
Well, we'll wrap it up from there. Thanks again to John Schmitt, longtime The Driller columnist and longtime industry figure. Thanks again for being on the show. We really appreciate it, John.
It was my pleasure, and it's my pleasure to continue to write columns. I hope I got a lot of years yet to do that, and that the Lord will bless me with the capabilities of doing that. Anyway, it's been interesting to visit with both you fellas. So
Yeah. Well, thank you for all you've done for the industry. And with that, we'll wrap. You can, of course, catch new episodes of the show on our website at thedriller.com or on social media, all of our social media channels. We're on Facebook, we're on LinkedIn, we're on Twitter. And so until next time, this is Drilling Insight.